Hello folks, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. And in this episode of the Konig Race Car, we're going to install the rear differential and the drive shafts combined with the CV joints. And as you can see, there's a lot of stuff to be installed, and we'll go through all this one by one once we start to install it. But the most important part is that I actually have new shafts or drive shafts. These drive shafts, and that's one of them, is actually custom made by a company not far away from where I live. And it's created out of hardened steel. So it's chrome and forged steel, and then it's inductive hardened. They had to make it from scratch because one side is for a Fiat X19 and the other side is actually for Volkswagen. So that was not a cheap piece. I believe this ran around 400 euros a piece. So this was quite expensive. Now you might remember that we did actually create our own shaft. We repaired the ones that were bent. And the reason I still went for new shafts and hardened shafts is that this is not as hard as the shafts that were made for me, especially not where we welded things together. That was a bit of a weak spot. It will always be a weak spot unless you get it hardened. I've got brand new bearings for the differential because the old ones were really gone, as you can tell. So we're going to replace those. The flanges that go onto the differential are still all right. I'm also going to install brand new CV joints. This is the CV joint for the wheel. This is a part of a Fiat. The inner CV joint is part of a Volkswagen. So that's the one that's going to go on the differential itself, on the flanges. And then we have the differential itself. Here it is with a fairly new sprocket on it. This is a 45 teeth sprocket. This differential is slightly different than what you would normally expect to see because it doesn't have a pinion inside. This is a chain-driven differential. So the difference is that it is a lot smaller, and the ratio is determined really by the sprocket itself. The sprocket right here is a 45, and the sprocket in the front of the bike, or I should say the engine, is a 16. So this is like a, let's say, a 1-to-3 ratio. So if you want to change the ratio of your differential on a normal car, you do it inside the differential. But here you would actually change the sprockets in the back. So if you make the sprockets in the back with less tooth or smaller, then you're going to lose some power, but you have more speed. And the other way around, if you make it larger, so more teeth around it, then you're going to make it slower in terms of top speed. But of course, acceleration will be better because you have more force. So this is all about ratios. I don't need to get into this one because I already talked about this before when we talked about the Konig Race Car. There is one more important aspect on this differential, is that it's a grease-based differential. So it doesn't have any oil inside like you would normally have on your differential. This one has actually grease inside. Now initially it had a bolt, and this is the bolt here, that was sitting right there to fill it up with grease. I have removed the bolt and I put a greasing nipple up, so it makes it easier to fill it up. So I did rinse it before in the previous episode when we took it all apart. We cleaned it all out, and then now I have it filled up with fresh grease. So I already have done that. Unfortunately, I didn't tape that. So that's what that is. Very simple and straightforward, nothing really special. This support is holding the bearing for the differential, and inside, of course, we'll have that bearing. So that goes in like this. And then you see these little screws here on the side. That is just to hold that bearing into place. So there's some small cutouts here, and I will have to do the same cutouts on the new bearings. We're just going to grind that off slightly in exactly the same spot. So you'll see me doing that. So there's a little bit of preparation work to be done. So now the new bearing should fit without any issues, I hope. And it does, so here we go. It can go in. And of course, we'll have to do the little cutouts to make sure that we can hold it in place. And as you can see, we have completed the rear suspension both on the right-hand side and on the left-hand side. I also installed the brake lines, and I have been bleeding the brakes, and you've seen that before in previous videos. We also installed the brake lines, and of course we have been bleeding the brake system. So we've got a master brake cylinder for the front and one for the rear, and I'm actually using .4. I know you could use silicone because the boiling point is higher, but I like .4, and you can see it's kind of filled up, so I can brake, and you see it's moving a little bit if I brake, but not a lot. And I'm going to put the bearing inside its holder, and I'm going to mark where these screws are because I need to do a little cut there into the bearing. Of course, I don't want to cut through the race, but just a little corner off so we can lock these bearings in place so they don't move back and forth. Here are my markings. All right. Okay. And now I just need to turn those screws, but I see it's not 100% in the right spot, so let me turn it a bit. Here we go. Turn the screw in, and it should hold that bearing in place. So I think that is good. So these tips are sitting in the right spot, so that bearing is now good. So this would be the type of installation we have to do. And then in the center we will have the differential fitted. So now it's time to install the bearing onto the differential, and I want to make sure that this is absolutely clean because you don't want to have no debris on it, and I have cleaned it up as you can see, so maybe a little bit of grease will help, and I will put some up. The same thing for the bearing itself, you want to make sure that is absolutely clean, and then we're going to press it on like this, and you want to press it straight. You might have seen in the previous videos when I took things apart that this was a bit tight. Now to push that in, I'm using an old race from the old bearing that I cut out, so I can place it in the middle of the bearing and press it down. You don't want to press on the edges on the bearing, and I'm just going to have a big washer here so I can press properly that down. Now I got to watch out with this press because it's a heavy press, so you don't want to force things down because you could break things easily. So let me grease this up a little bit first, and then we'll try to get it on. Now some people tell me that you don't need to grease things up when you press things together because it's creating an extra coat of thickness. And I guess that's right to some extent, but I've always been doing that, so maybe I'm wrong, but I'm sure you guys will let me know how you do it. A bit tricky, we need to align it, and then I'll make sure that we do it in the right way because I don't want to put it on in the wrong direction. I think the key here is to keep it absolutely straight. And all right, let's see. It's the beginning that counts. Pushing it little bit by little bit, and it's going in. You can see that. Okay. It's getting a little bit tough. I'm gonna see how that goes. Yeah, so that's looking good. So I have like half a millimeter to go. So let's push a bit more. And now it's going, right? You can see it going. So it just moved down properly. Now it's in, it just jumped in, and that's what you want to get. You want to get it all the way to the end. And now we do the second side in a similar way. All right, so we got both bearings in, and we're all set. So now the diff is running on the bearings that we just pushed in. So now we can actually go and install it. So next is installing these flanges, and they need to go in there. But before doing so, I want to make sure everything is absolutely clean. All right, and I will put again a bit of grease up, because I think this will be another tight fit. All right. And also clean up the flange itself. Let's see if we can get it in. I'm afraid that this is going to be a little bit of fiddling and pushing. There we go. So that's in. And now we need to bolt it down. So let's see if we can get the diff in place without having to remove too many other parts. And remember, we have the left and the right hand side, so that looks quite all right. I'm trying to align it with the front tooth wheel, so I think this looks good. Okay, so I have to install these spacers underneath. So this is the nut of the bolt, and that's a little bit tricky to get it, because this is a closed channel, so we'll have to place them straight first and then try from underneath. I have some holes. So I have the differential loosely in place with the bolts, and there was a little bit of fiddling, but here we go in to install the CV joint, right? So that's where the CV joint will come, and then we have the boot, and then of course we have the drive shaft going to the wheel. All right, so I got the CV joint on the axle, and unfortunately my camera wasn't turned on when I did it. And now what we got to do is put a circlip up, and then we should be good. So next is putting the circlip up, and for that one I have a set of pliers to do so. And hopefully we can get this in place without too much hassle. And that is in place. Now comes the fun part. We need to pack this with grease, and that grease typically comes with the CV joints if you buy them. So yeah, this is a bit of a dirty job to do, but it's got to be done. And you really want to pack it very well. You see, this is black, dark grease. Turn it over and see. There's nothing here yet, as you can tell. So here we need to pack as well. I'm not sure what is in this grease. I think they may have some graphite in it. We packed it pretty well, so now we will place the gator over it. There we go. And then we go in to install a clamp on it so that gator really closes off properly, because you've seen all the grease that's inside. So the method for the outer CV joint is exactly the same. We have to pack it with grease. Now the axle will fit in here with a clip which is inside here. So there's not much you need to do to put the axle in. It should actually slide in, but we need to pack it with grease. And before you put the axle in, don't forget to put the gator up. Otherwise you can't get it on anymore and you have to redo this. All right, so let's start packing this again with grease. I can't really say that I like doing this, but okay, it has to be done, right? You want to put the whole bag in it. right. See how it comes through the sides? That's what I want to see. And maybe a little bit of grease might help to slide it over. Again, I have these clips to hold everything in place. So let's see if we can push this over. And we can. Oops, that's the wrong direction, Steve. See how fast you make a mistake if you don't pay attention. Maybe I should have lunch. Sounds like a good plan, as soon as this shaft is complete. There we go. So that's on. So now we can install it onto the CV joint. All right. And that is in. What just fell was a socket, guys, so nothing really to worry about. I just want to make sure everything is in place properly, and it is. So now the gaiter goes on. It's a very tight one, so I will have to squeeze a bit with it, okay? Not an easy job, as you can see, so especially not if you're not supposed to be in front of the camera. All right. With a little bit of effort, you can get it in. All right, let's clean this up. Guess we made a mess out of it. I just hooked it into place, so these hooks are fitting in the hole, so it's tight. Now we need to squeeze this part, and this is secured. And that makes it a very, very solid and tight connection. Here we go. Now you could do it with tie wraps as well, but I like this better. Now it's important that the gaiter is fully closed off because you have the grease inside and you don't want that to spill out. So we still have to put one up here. We'll do that in a few seconds, and then we're going to try to fit the shaft. All right, so let's see if we can get the shaft in. Here we go. So that looks good. And then finally, we're going to put the washer up and the big locking nut. I'm not going to tighten it yet. I'm just going to assemble everything first on both sides, and then we'll see. Of course, the diff isn't bolted down yet either. It's still all very loose, but this is how I like to do things. See how everything fits first. So that seems to be okay. So now I'm going to bolt down the CV joint here on the diff, and then we lock up the nut on the wheel, and then we do the other side. So we have the drive shaft on the right hand side in place. I think this guy is going to have some lunch now, and after lunch I'm going to continue to build the second shaft on the other side, and I'm not going to show it to you because it's exactly the same procedure. And then I'm going to align everything, so I'm going to make sure that the sprockets are really aligned to each other. Hopefully I have a chain by then. And then we're going to tighten down all those bolts to the right torque, and then we'll secure these big nuts here. And that should be it for the drive shaft. So that should be now sorted out. And I think it is because it looks pretty good. So we are done with the assembly of both drive shafts. And I think this is looking quite all right. All what's left now is to install the chain and actually position the differential in the proper place and make sure that the tension on the chain is correct. The good thing is, guys, the chain has arrived. So I've got a brand new chain. Normally you should also change the sprockets, but the sprockets on the car here are still in a very good shape there. In fact, they were new already. So I'm just going to settle with the chain. And here's the new chain, and that's the one that we now need to shorten. And it actually comes with a knuckle that we have to press on. So let's start. The first thing we will have to do is to shorten the new chain, and for that one you're going to need some tools. And this is a chain tool to cut the chain and to connect the chain. I do recommend that you buy the good quality tool. I had a cheaper one before and it failed on me already. So I'm going to lay out the new chain next to the old one. And as you can see, it is quite a bit longer. So the knuckle I want to take out is this one right here. So I have to press out this pin and that pin. Okay. So that's disconnected. We still have to do one part, which is this part right now. Greasy job, guys, believe me. Okay. Okay, so here we are. So here is that connection. So I'm just going to grease this up as it should be. And then we connect it. Like so. Also put the rubber rings up on this side. And now we connect the plate between the two. And then we need to press it in place. And hopefully this will fit here. I'm not sure. Let's see. But now I need to rivet this pin. So therefore we need to put an insert in the clamp. Okay, and then we put it up. And then we turn. Okay, that should be it. Let's have a look. And here you go. You see, it's nicely riveted open. All right, so now we just need to align the chain, making sure that it runs straight, right? So with these bolts in the back, I now can pull back that differential to tighten up the chain. And that's what we're going to do now first. But of course, I need to do it on both sides, because otherwise this is not going to work too well, will it? So the chain is now having the right tension, and she is running straight. I will have to adjust it after we've done, of course, the shakedown again, because it may stretch a bit, but I think this is... So let's see if we can actually start the car and if it drives a little bit forward. I know I have not aligned anything, I have not locked all the bolts up, but still, I think it's worthwhile to give it a try. So that seems to work. I can't drive outside yet because I still have to do all the alignment and fix all the bolts. But it brakes, it shifts, so I think we are good. So that's it, guys, for this video. In the next video, we're going to adjust the geometry. We put it on the scales, and we'll put the top off, of course, because that one has been painted meanwhile. And this is how it's going to look like. So stay tuned, because that's the next video that is coming up.